Hi everyone, happy Monday. Thanks for joining me today. As I was thinking about what topics to do for this week, I realized that, I think it's fun to do workouts on live, maybe once a week. I don't want to be doing workouts on live multiple times a week, both because they don't actually get as much engagement, but also because I don't enjoy them as much. I enjoy more having a conversation and having a back and forth, chatting with you guys in the comments, having more active, engaging conversations. So what more active, engaging, fun to do but tell a story? So I'm going to be sharing more about my story. Actually, this is something that I wrote several years ago and I sent it out to my mailing list. But we're going to go through it kind of part by part, and I'm going to be reading to you what I wrote. Each part is a step in my personal story, and I'll give you a little intro on what that story is, the premise of the story, and then we're going to do part 1 today, and we'll see what you guys think. If you like it, we'll keep going. We'll probably just keep going. We'll go through a part each week. So like on Mondays, next Monday we'll do part 2. We'll kind of keep going. Hi Ray, hi Deborah, thanks for being here. Say hi in the chat if you're here. So for those of you that don't know, you probably know if you're on this live or following my channel, but I'm a world champion in kettlebell sport lifting. Yes, there are competitions with kettlebell training. I also have 7 masters sport titles. It's like the equivalent of a black belt in kettlebell sport lifting that I achieved by the age of, 26 or 27. And I have been a high achiever my whole life. I just started directing it from studies towards physicality. Hi, Susie. Thanks for joining. Appreciate you being here. And so, I was very studious in high school and college. Again, for those of you who don't know my story, you may not know, I actually studied civil engineering at UC Berkeley. So I went into college thinking I was going to become an engineer because I, aced all my classes in high school. I thought, what can I do that's difficult and challenging? And my dad and my brother are engineers. They encouraged me to do engineering. There's not a lot of women in the field, so it creates opportunities. So I decided to do engineering. I got to UC Berkeley. First 2 years are super hard, but you kind of got to get through it to get to your main coursework. I got into my 3rd year, started studying civil engineering topics, and realized that even though the information was interesting, I just couldn't see myself having a career as an engineer, sitting behind a desk, working a 9 to 5. It was something I had never really thought about the reality of that. I just thought like, I'm going to grow up and get a good job and make a lot of money. But I never thought about what does my day-to-day life look like? Do I actually like it? I just had never really thought beyond that, because when you're a kid, when you're a teenager, you just don't really, I just didn't really think about the reality of it. So as that started getting closer, my 3rd, 4th year of college, I just was like, oh my God, this was looming like a prison sentence to me. So I ended up, I had a part-time job at a gym that I started my 3rd year in college, and I just loved it. I loved being at the gym. I love, I'd been an athlete in high school, and I had been strength training and running in college, and I just loved being at the gym. I loved, lifting other people up, helping them to get stronger and feel empowered and confident in their body. And so I ended up deciding to finish my engineering degree, because I was thinking about whether to drop out and just, cut out my 3rd or 4th year. I decided to just finish it. And then I went on to be a trainer at the gym I was working part-time at full-time after I graduated. They were so kind as to give me an offer for a full-time position. They knew how much I loved it, and wasn't sure that I wanted to go into engineering. So that kind of started me on the track to becoming a trainer, which has had its ups and downs. It's got its pros and cons, but this is gonna lead you into my story here. So this is kind of just the preamble before we get started here. As I became a personal trainer and I became really involved in this gym I was working at, that's when I would say I really started overtraining. So I was an athlete in high school. I was a track and field athlete, and I had a great coach who really influenced and inspired me to become a coach because he had such a positive impact on me. But I would train all year long for track. So we would have, in the summertime, we would do weightlifting. We would do certain things we couldn't do as heavy during the season. And then as it got closer to the season, we'd start preparing for track and field. Hi, Rachel. Thank you for joining. So I had been training consistently since like 14, 15, and including weight training. But when I started working at the gym full time, I would say that's when I started really pushing my limits. I started training twice a day. I was biking to and from the gym twice a day, which was 45 minutes from where I lived near campus. So I would bike 45 minutes, super early in the morning, like 4:30 in the morning. I would work and maybe work out, and then I would bike back. I didn't have a car. So that was already an hour and a half of biking plus a workout. Then I would go to class, and then I would often come back in the evening to the gym. So I would bike another 45 minutes, do a class, and then I'd bike back. Okay, so if you're tallying this up, that's at least 5 hours of exercise multiple days a week. So look, overtraining feels really good when you start doing it. Hi, Joa. I'm sorry, I'm not totally sure how to say your name. Thanks for joining from Brazil. Training a lot, just like when you first start strength training, it feels good. When you train a lot at first, you get results and it feels great. It's not until later that, it starts maybe hitting you and you start realizing, okay, this isn't sustainable. But for me, it took me a very, very, very long time to get to that. Okay. So I really just got into the attitude of like, more exercise is better, more. And, after I had worked at the gym that I was working at, it was called Ice Chamber. After I had worked there for about a year, a little over a year, I started kind of feeling like I wanted to move on, mainly because, most of the people at the gym were much older than me. They were in a very different phase of their life. I was like 22, 23, and I had just graduated college. Most of my friends from college had moved away from the area, and the people at the gym, the other trainers, I loved them, and they had families, they were married, they were in a very different phase of life. So I often felt lonely and felt like I wanted to find somewhere else where it was easier for me to meet like-minded people that were my same age. So I ended up moving down to San Diego. San Diego is an excellent place to be if you're a fitness professional. There's so much going on. There's so many fitness boutiques and different gyms and trainers and outdoor stuff. There's so much going on there. So I had visited there, and it was super exciting to me, this idea of moving down there. So I ended up moving down there. I spent the next, I moved down there in 2014, and I spent the next 6 years living in San Diego. I worked at several different gyms down there. The main one, many of you, if you followed me for a while, you know it, Core Strength and Conditioning. Unfortunately, it's no longer around, but an amazing gym, an amazing community. I coached a kettlebell sport team there. That whole team started traveling to compete in kettlebell sport, and I started getting super heavily into kettlebell sport training, double kettlebells, pushing the limits there with my, pushing my physical limits in competition, which was really awesome. I don't regret it, even though it contributed to some, health challenges that I'm still kind of working on healing today. But it was a great experience. I got to travel the world, teach all over for kettlebell sport. I'm really grateful for that experience. But we're going to kind of segue into our story. Hi, Kelly. Thanks for joining. I appreciate everybody saying hi. This is awesome. If you guys have questions along the way, feel free to ask questions. This story is mostly in chronological order, but some things are just, I wrote kind of around different topics within this whole experience that I've had. So there may be more things to fill in along the way. But yeah, today is story time. I'm going to tell you a little piece of my story every week here on Mondays, see how this goes. So during this series, I'm going to tell you about the demons that drove my compulsion to exercise, what it was like to be a kettlebell celebrity, why I quit Instagram for several years, why I don't compete in kettlebell sport anymore, what I do now, and how I've changed my approach to training and really changed my approach to life, because for a while, training was my life. So that shifted and took a different shape in terms of my life, my training, and how I view those things. Hi, Ernest. Thanks for joining. Okay, so we're going to start with part one. As promised, this one is called Sick on the Platform. So I'm going to read this to you guys. And again, I'd love to hear your thoughts along the way or at the end of the story. Or if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. So I'm going to be reading from my computer here. Sick on the Platform. And that photo, by the way, from the thumbnail, that photo is from what I'm talking about here. So I don't know if you think this, but when I look at that photo, I look like a zombie. And you're going to find out why. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, you can go back to my profile later, or you can pull it up on a different device or something. If you go to my page and look at the lives and you just look at the thumbnail for today's live, just look at the picture that's from this competition. I was standing on the platform holding a 53-pound kettlebell over my head, and I felt worse than I had ever felt in my life. I felt feverish and depleted, with very little energy in the tank. I was ill and completely unfit to be lifting a kettlebell, but I had traveled all the way to Ireland for the World Championships, so there was no going back. By the way, this is not the World Championships that I won. You'll see why, but that was a different one. I was on the platform competing against the best female kettlebell athlete in the world. She doubled my score that day. While it was far from my best performance, I hung on as long as I could to get within 10 reps of my personal best. I left after my set to go crash at the hotel. I didn't leave the room for the rest of the day. I was down for the count. I loved traveling to compete all over the world for kettlebell sport, and I wouldn't change my experience for anything. That being said, I trained myself to ignore the signals of my body in order to achieve the goals of my mind, when clearly my body was giving me distress signals over and over again in different ways. I let my mind and intellect be the drivers rather than my body and my intuition. And this bled into my career and my personal life. Getting ill at this competition was my body's check engine light telling me how far off course I was. I was just too arrogant to listen. I wanted what I wanted, and I thought the choices I made for myself only affected me. I didn't know how far from the truth that was. Every choice I made had a ripple effect outward into the world, whether through my attitude, my energy, or the sequence of events that happened as a result. That's part one. Let me know what you think. If you guys really want to hear part two, we can do part two today, and then we'll continue on with part three next time. Let me know. If you guys want to hear, if you want to hear part two, drop in the comments, drop a comment and say, I want to hear part two. Deborah said a cliffhanger. South to West said, sounds scary. I mean, it is kind of scary, honestly, when I think about what I put my body through. Okay, Susie said, yes, let's hear part two. South to West, being on the stage and feeling so horrible. Yeah, it was not fun. Although, you know, despite the bad memories of that trip with being sick, I have good memories from that trip too. Because one of the cool things that happened was both my parents are divorced, but both my parents ended up showing up in Ireland to see me at the World Championships, come see me compete, and I didn't know they were coming. Maybe I knew my mom was coming, but my dad, I think, was a surprise, so I didn't know they were coming. That was super cool to have them both there, just hanging out with different kettlebell sport athletes, just being in a different country and seeing this big competition. There's a lot of really great things about it, so don't feel too bad for me. It was also a good experience, and you know. Okay. We'll do one more because I realized that was like kind of a short one, and I'm leaving you hanging there. So we'll do one more. Let me get this ready here. Any other thoughts on part one? Being 360, yes, what are we doing? I'm sharing my story. I just finished part one of the story. We're going to go on to part two. since this is the inaugural day, we're going to part 2. Okay, so just to recap for those of you who missed it, I read a little segment of my story where I was in Ireland, in Dublin, for the World Championships for kettlebell sport, and I was sick on the platform, and I did horrible that day. Even though I was able, well, I didn't do horrible. I was within 10 reps of my personal best. It wasn't a great set. My score got doubled by the lady next to me, but she was like the best in the world. So, but that was a check engine light for my body that day because I was ignoring my body's signals, and that was going to lead to some different things. So we're going to talk about part 2 now. Are you guys ready? Thumbs up if you're ready. Thumbs up if you're ready. Gotta make sure everyone's still paying attention. All right, Deborah's here. She's ready for it. South to West, ready for it. Being 360's ready for it. Kelly's ready for it. All right. I like it. Okay, here goes part 2. What is this one called? I should probably tell you. This one is called The Champion Mindset. I have this great little image I made for it. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this on my... I'm going to try to show you my computer screen. But I made this little photo. Can you guys see this? It's me, and there's like a little devil, a little angel on my shoulder. Okay, so I made this cool little image. The little devil like whispering one thing in my ear and the little angel whispering something else in my other ear. Okay. Okay. I was making history by competing in the most anticipated event of the World Championships. And now this is the World Championships that I won. Okay. This was several years later. It was the first time ever that women were competing with 2 53-pound kettlebells in the long cycle event. So long cycle is clean and jerk. At one time, this was believed to be impossible. It was believed to be impossible for women to lift double 53-pound kettlebells. The pressure was on, to say the least. This was also the very last set of the end of the weekend. So it was like the second day of competition at the very end, because it was the most anticipated event of the whole weekend to see women lift 2 53-pound kettlebells. There was a war being waged internally. The fatigue of my body versus the tenacity of my mind. I was standing on the platform in front of hundreds of people. The little devil sitting on my right shoulder whispered in my ear, "You're getting tired. You should set the bells down now and give up." The little angel on my left shoulder chimed in, "You can do it. You've trained too long and too hard for this to give up now." The little devil protested, "Why are you doing this? Your body is screaming for you to stop. You might even injure yourself." A kettlebell sport competition is 10 minutes of sheer unadulterated hell. During that set of long cycle, I experienced my heart pounding in my throat, my lungs on fire and ready to burst, full body exhaustion, and an overwhelming urge to vomit or poop. In the end, the angel won, reminding me of my goals and aspirations and how good it would feel to accomplish what I set out to do. The pain and discomfort I felt paled in comparison to my desire to win. You could say I have a true champion mindset, hence why that pesky little devil never won out. There are many benefits of having a champion mindset, such as mental tenacity and confidence in my physical abilities. I believe the tenacity I built through kettlebell sport helped me face the many challenges that I struggled with several years later. That being said, my champion mindset came from deep-rooted feelings of unworthiness and my desire for validation. Pushing my body to its breaking point and beyond shows how desperately I wanted those accolades and the social rewards that followed. The mind is powerful. It can overcome the body. But just because it can doesn't mean it should. Some of you will be familiar with that phrase. When I think back to that little devil on my shoulder who asks me, "Why are you doing this?" Perhaps he wasn't a devil at all, but rather a voice of reason. I kept following the little angel to the point that even after I had reached world champion status, I pushed even harder and further, only to make matters worse for my body. We'll have to flash forward for you to understand what I mean. And that's the cliffhanger on that one. Let me know your thoughts on that one. Deborah has a question here. Why did you feel unworthy? It's a good question. You know, I would say I've been on more of a a deeper inner journey, spiritual journey, and trying to unpack some of the reasons, the motivations and things inside of me. I don't really know why I felt unworthy. I wouldn't say I had anything. I wouldn't say I was told that I was unworthy as a child, or I come from a family where I was loved, my parents loved me, and there was problems and dysfunction like any family, but I don't know of anything major significant that I could point to say, oh, that's why I felt unworthy. I just know that I felt unworthy. Maybe you would call it low self-esteem, that you just don't think that you're worthy without something to show for you or an accomplishment. I think it's a fairly common feeling. I think it's a common human phenomena to feel unworthy. I think there's many people who struggle with that, whether it's from trauma, whether it's from people in their life telling them that they're, not good enough or things like that, or it's just some internalized thing societally or from low self-esteem from other things that happen in life. I just know that was a big driving factor for why I pushed myself so hard, both academically and when it came to, physicality. I pushed myself really hard because I wanted to sort of prove something or to show people that I was good or that I was cool or that people would, say nice things about me. Wow, you're so amazing. You're this, you're that, and I think generally we search for that when we don't have the self-esteem ourselves to already know that. We look for other people to tell us that. Being 360 asks, so women didn't lift 53 pounds at that time in this category. So what I read from this Champion Mindset story is about the World Championships, where it was actually the first time women ever competed with double 53-pound bells in a world championship where it was an official event. There had been some early trailblazers who had done double 24s as a demonstration set. Katarina Helmanovska, she kind of inspired the double kettlebell movement for women. I think she did a demonstration set with double 24 kilo bells. Super strong. This was the first time where it was official in the World Championships that women were allowed to compete with double kettlebells at that weight. And since then, I think some kettlebell sport organizations have actually kind of backed off of the 24s and made and put women at double 20s for Master of Sport, and maybe 24s are Master of Sport International class. But it was Master of Sport professional level when I was competing. Deborah said, I get it, just really curious about how you get to the bottom of it. Yeah, that is the $1 million question. You're gonna hear more as I share more of my story. I'm gonna share a little bit more. It'll start to make more sense. This is just dipping your foot into the beginning to kind of pique your interest into this story. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more. And the story isn't done, of course, because my life continues to go on and I've learned more and more. But I think I'm still getting to the bottom of it. I wouldn't say I have gotten to the bottom of it, but just have recognized some themes, some emotions that were hidden. You know, I think I spent a lot of time like stuffing my emotions down. I didn't really want to spend time on feeling them, or I didn't want to spend time like crying or thinking about anything that had happened in my life that was uncomfortable. Like I just kind of wanted to shut it away and move on. But that caught up to me later. South to West said, were you the same way in academics, feeling unworthy? I can kind of relate to that. That's a good question. I didn't feel that. I can't say that I felt that when I was in school, that I was unworthy. I think that, like, again, I don't think I really felt it or noticed it until I kind of was like unpacking things, like letting emotions come out, sort of journaling about stuff, thinking back over my past and how those things affected me and affected my behavior, that I realized it came from that like deep down sense of feeling unworthy without accomplishment. So I do think it was driven by that. But when I was in high school or when I was in college, I wouldn't, if you had asked me like, do you feel unworthy? I would have been like, what are you talking about? I'm fine. So I didn't know it at the time, but I do think that drove it, because I felt like, you know, in high school, that was kind of what I took on as my identity. It was like, I'm a smart girl, you know, like this is what I have to like show for myself. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Deborah said, very common feel of that. Absolutely. I think the great thing about sharing our personal stories and journeys, I think number one, it's the most authentic thing that we have to share is our experience. It's the most authentic and unique thing we have to share, but it is absolutely like not unique in terms of like everything that we feel and experience and go through is like lived human experience. Like none of it is new. I don't think any of the things that I struggle with or have struggled with, or, you know, challenges that I've faced are new by any stretch of the imagination. I think they are very common. I think we all find a lot of commonality in our stories, even if they feel so unique to us, or sometimes we feel alone in our struggles. But the reality is that a lot of the underlying feelings and themes of things are very similar in all of our stories. I just saw this great Instagram post by this lady I just started following that I feel like relates to this, because I just feel like it was so spot on relatable to me, but I realized as I read it, it was like, okay, this is obviously relatable to other people too. This is what it said. If people were really honest, most adults would admit that they struggle with being addicted to their phone, struggling to find purpose and meaning, feeling like you're working your life away, constantly having to clean, unrealized dreams, grief, some level of body dysmorphia, financial stress, and then it says life is tough, but so are you. I just thought it was a cool post, because those are things that like we don't always like to admit that we struggle with all of those things, but I feel like in the modern world, most of us are struggling with those things at some level. And again, we can feel really alone in our struggles, but they are very common. Most people are going through it, you know. Any other questions about parts 1 and 2? I know you guys probably want me to go on. There's a lot of parts to this story, but I'm gonna share them. I'm gonna share part 3, and maybe we'll do like two parts per live, but I'll share probably part 3 and part 4 next Monday, unless you guys want to see it sooner. But we'll probably just do Monday, and we'll keep it going. I think you guys are gonna be excited to hear. I gotta remind myself I gotta figure out if there's a way for me to share some of the images I made for my email list, because they're fun, and I feel like the next one is pretty important for me to share. We'll see if I can figure out how to do that. Any other questions or thoughts on parts 1 and 2? I also should let you know that we have 2 other lives happening this week. On Wednesday, this was kind of requested last Thursday. Somebody had some good ideas. I think Lovely had some good ideas for this. So Wednesday at 11 a.m., we're going to do a dumbbell upper body workout. I'm going to have to go dig out my dumbbells from the garage to find 2 dumbbells that match. You're going to need 2, like a pair of light dumbbells and then 1 heavy dumbbell. That's Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. And then Thursday, we're going to talk about kettlebell versus dumbbell. So talk about the differences in training with kettlebells versus dumbbells, some of my thoughts on what kettlebells are better for, what dumbbells are better for. So if you're interested in that topic, be sure to join Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. And then we'll continue storytelling on Monday next week. Any other thoughts or questions? Otherwise, we may just keep it short and sweet today. You're welcome, Deborah. Thanks for joining and watching and listening. I'm excited to share more with you guys. Like, I spent a lot of time crafting these emails. Again, I think I sent these out like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I spent a lot of time crafting them, so I'm excited to kind of use them in a different forum and chat a little bit more about it. You're welcome, Rachel. There's lots more to come, and this will tell you, for those of you who are Kettlebell Solo members, this will give you a better idea of, why I'm so passionate and excited about Kettlebell Solo and what got me to some of the mindset and philosophy around Kettlebell Solo training and why we emphasize less is more and why some of the principles that are in there about getting to know your body and listening to your body, why those are there. Because I've done the opposite of that. I have done the ignoring my body's signals, not listening, pushing through anyway, letting my head tell me, well, I need to do this workout on this day. I need to keep pushing. And that, you're going to find out next week where that got me, where that took me to physically. So stay tuned for that, because it's interesting, because I think most people don't get to the place where on the spectrum of like no exercise to way too much exercise. Most people don't get to the spectrum of like way too much and see the negative effects of it. We see a lot of the no exercise and the negative effects that has on people, and then there's people in a spectrum in the middle. But when you get to this place really far on the other end, it's maybe just as damaging as no exercise at all. So really, that's where finding the balance is so key. No, being 360, I have not tried that. I don't know what that is. Oh, is that an Indian club? Is that another name for an Indian club? Or is it a mace? I have done mace and Indian club training, if that's what you're asking. I got some right here. Well, these are Indian clubs. I'm not sure if you're talking about Indian clubs or if you're talking about like these are very light, but you might be talking about like a steel mace or like a heavier thing. I'm not sure. You can let me know. This is kind of hard to do sitting down. I normally do this standing up. If the camera falls down, you know what happened. It means I let one of these things go and I hit my phone. But hopefully that isn't going to happen. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff to be done with Indian clubs and mace and all that. Yeah, we do have one heavy mace. I don't train with it a lot, but I have done a mace competition. Like it's a 10-minute 10 to 2 set. So I have done that before. So I've done a lot of 10 to 2s and 360s and all that. It's just not my favorite thing. I like it, but I like other things better. All right, you guys. Well, thank you for joining me today. We'll pick up on this story again next Monday, so stay tuned, and I hope to see you on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.